Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we're so glad to have you here. The race for New Jersey governor is heating up with two recent primary debates that gave voters their first real look at the candidates vying to succeed Governor Phil Murphy. I have two of the debate panelists on the show today. Standing by is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe. First, though, we're going to take a look at what unfolded in both the Democratic and Republican debates produced by On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and Rider University. Take a look. The Democrats, 6 of them, they're up first. So you're going to hear from former State Senate President Steve Sweeney, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop, Sean Spiller of the NJEA, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, and Congressman Josh Gottheimer. Those are the Democrats. The 4 Republicans are former radio talk show host Bill Spadea, former candidate for governor Jack Ciattarelli, former state senator Ed Burr, and state senator John Bramnick.
Raise your hand if you believe that one of the goals of the next governor should be protecting immigrants in New Jersey, even those who are here illegally.
We should protect everyone.
We should protect people in New Jersey, especially with the Constitution.
The reasons or ways that pathways that people become documented citizens of the United States and then say they're illegal is a problem, right? We cannot risk the 4th Amendment, the 14th Amendment to push this political agenda that Donald Trump has.
When we see folks who are saying we're going to barge into places of employment and say, let's show me your papers or I'm going to detain you, and doing that to people, including folks who served in our military, it's just unacceptable.
We need to make sure people have a pathway to citizenship, who are here, who are working hard, who are paying taxes, DACA recipients, TPS recipients, and we also need better border security.
I've been unapologetic in support of the Immigrant Trust Act, and I think my track record in Jersey City is second to none. We are the only nationally accredited immigration office in a municipal building in the country that we started.
With Donald Trump, we all should stand and oppose what Donald Trump's doing. He's breaking the law. He's doing it illegally. He's doing it without legal search warrants. It's horrible what he's doing.
The bigger issue, right, that we've got to fix is immigration reform broader, right, to make sure that we deal with the bigger system issues so that it doesn't keep happening over and over again. And what's ridiculous, again, going to President Trump, what he did, there was literally a deal done, right, to make sure that we had more processing, that we could take care of people, we have work visas.
Would you please raise your hand if you support capping the amount of state aid a school district can lose from year to year at either 2% of last year's budget or the total amount of state aid it receives? Both of these have been proposed. So either one of those, if you support capping the amount of state aid that a district can lose in 1 year.
I just want you to raise your hands if you think that taxes in New Jersey are too high. Okay, so I see 4 hands.
The Trump administration is taking steps to defund and dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. He wants to do it from within. If you're elected governor, will you seek to do the same thing at the New Jersey Department of Education? I'll start with Assemblyman Ciattarelli.
I don't think we need more than a couple dozen people, David, to set the standards for what aptitude is for our children here in New Jersey.
I don't know that my opponent really understands what school choice means. Let's talk about it in detail. First of all, we need education savings accounts in New Jersey.
No, Bill, not the radio.
We need to leave successful schools alone. The meddling of the Department of Education in good schools, making it harder and harder for teachers to teach.
We have too much bloat in our Department of Education. But what we really have is a power that is corrupt, the NJEA. And I love the good teachers, but I don't think good teachers want their union dues going to support a guy who's running for governor.
Joining me now to unpack all of this is David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, who was also a panelist for the debate. David, good to see you.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, we were prepared for some fireworks, but when you compare the Democrats to the Republicans, a stark contrast. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Democrats was going to be a slugfest. Sometimes when they get up in each other's faces, they're not quite as harsh as they are when they're talking to their opponents on Twitter or social media. That was the one that I thought was going to be really loud and rambunctious, and then you get to the Republicans, and it was gloves off from the first minute.
From the opening statements, they were going
Yes.
at it. And on the Democratic side, what was interesting, we had 6 candidates on the Democratic side. And at one point, fairly early into it, you had Steve Sweeney, who is the former Senate president, and Ras Baraka, Newark mayor. They were kind of going over each other, but it almost looked like a very good friendship was developing out there. And that's the
Yeah.
feedback that I'm getting,
Yeah.
is how likable and respectful they were.
Yeah. They were, and there was this, this little bromance going on between the two, and one of the things that helps is that they're not competing for the same primary voter. Sweeney comes out of the moderate faction of the Democratic Party, and don't let anybody say that New Jersey Democrats are all left wing. Moderates may be the key faction in that party. They're not going after each other's votes, and as you remember, the podiums were done by a random draw.
Right.
It wasn't set up that way. They were getting along. They were playing off each other, and just that chemistry worked for them.
Yeah, and the other thing that we noted after the debate, so you had Steve Sweeney, Ras Baraka, Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop, Sean Spiller from NJEA, and 2 members of Congress, Mikey Sherrill, Josh Gottheimer. Mikey Sherrill, Josh Gottheimer spoke the least amount, which I want to get your takeaway on why you think that is when you look at the other 4 candidates, as opposed to 2 sitting members of Congress who one might think, well, they're going to be able to run away with this because they have more experience.
Yeah, I think it's just the way that worked out. You get into these debates and you sort of get into a rhythm, and once it literally is like a horse race. Once you fall a little bit behind, it's harder to overtake them. We were monitoring how much time each candidate spoke. Ras Baraka got 18 minutes. Mikey Sherrill got 9 minutes. Now remember, Mikey is viewed as sort of a head. She's running first in the polls, not by a lot. Still more than half of the voters are undecided. But she went into this to do no harm. And when you want to do no harm, you sort of hold back a little bit. Don't say a lot. She's knowledgeable on the issues. I don't. And Gottheimer too. I mean, they are both some policy wonks. So I don't doubt that. I think they just maybe because it was a bunch of Jersey people up there and they're not around them all the time. They needed to get their footing.
Right.
Mikey was in do no harm mode, and she didn't do any harm to herself. She came out of the debate and is continuing to win party support.
And this is the thing going into the debate, what we were anticipating is candidates were probably, or we thought there was a good possibility they were looking for a chance to not only introduce themselves to the public, but give themselves a viral moment. When you look at the Republican side, that one got quite heated, literally from opening statements. So what were some of the standout moments and exchanges on the Republican side?
Yeah, I mean, it started with Jack Ciattarelli's opening statement. He went after John Bramnick and he went after Bill Spadea, and that's got people talking. This is the debate they wanted, and anybody who has seen it or is going to see it shouldn't think that this got out of hand. This is exactly where the candidates wanted to be, and Ciattarelli is getting a lot of platitudes for showing that he's taking this primary seriously and he's willing to throw a punch. In primaries, sometimes you're looking at just an audition for the general. People want to win this election. They want their guy to, or their woman to be the governor, and they need to know, they need to be reassured that this person's going to be able to handle the rigors of a general election. Ciattarelli been through this before. He almost beat Phil Murphy, but he came out there and if he showed one thing, and he showed a few really strong attributes, but if he showed one thing at all, it was that he's taking this primary seriously, that he's not resting on his laurels as the standard bearer of his party.
Well, and that's one of the things that I go back to my college days and marketing classes. When you're Coke, the #1 soda, you're not mentioning Pepsi. So I thought it was an interesting strategy, Jack Ciattarelli not being the incumbent, but having already run twice and a little bit more name recognition. That surprised me. But also, when you look at the Republican candidates and how they're positioning themselves on national issues like the support of President Trump, considering how well he did in New Jersey, can you just talk a little bit about that and how that might have played with voters in the narrative during that debate?
Sure. I mean, make no mistake, Donald Trump is extraordinarily popular among Republican primary voters in New Jersey and everywhere else. And Bramnick had been the anti-Trump candidate, didn't support him in 16, 20, 24. He's the moderate in the race. Bramnick made a decision to play for some of those Trump voters. He still held true to himself. He still criticized the pardons for January 6th, but there was a point where the candidates were asked, raise your hands if you want Donald Trump to come in and campaign for you in New Jersey in the fall, and all four of them raised their hands. Now, you knew that Spadea and Ciattarelli and Durr were going to say yes. Bramnick raising his hand surprised me, and that shows that Bramnick is now extending an olive branch to the Trump faction of the party.
Yeah, and you point blank on the Democratic side said, I want you to grade, or maybe it was Joey who said, I want you to grade Governor Phil Murphy. So when you have six Democrats on the stage, is it difficult for one candidate to stand out? Did you see one candidate standing out?
Yeah, I think I saw, and I think the conventional wisdom is that Ras Baraka had his coming out moment, and you want to do that in February when you can.
Right. And this is one of the things that I'm hearing so much about the debate is, Ras Baraka, people know him in Newark, but they don't know him otherwise. But it was more about, beating expectations. You would, again, think that the two members of Congress would have come away the most polished, but what I'm hearing a lot of feedback is, Ras Baraka, and he's, getting, as you referenced, a bump out of this.
Yeah. I mean, Mayor Baraka is he's probably by far, I shouldn't say probably, by far the best orator of the Democratic field. Being on a stage is where he excels, and he came out there. A lot of us are used to a very serious, somber Baraka. He came out there. He was fun, Ras. He was extraordinarily likable, and on top of that, he was substantive. He was charismatic. He was able to make his points and still sort of get smiles from his opponents. It was all good for him that night.
Finally, what do you think New Jersey voters should be watching for in the days and weeks ahead? Because, it really isn't that long, 12 weeks or so until the primary. Because, you have conventions. Some candidates are going to the county conventions. Others are sitting it out. What do you think the voters should be watching for?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, voting starts at the end of April. That's when vote by mail ballots go out. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of people voting. These days, I think the key is authenticity. And I think that's what voters are looking for, is somebody that they look at and say, I could see that person being my governor for the next 8 years. And Laura, you and I have referred to this as sort of speed dating at this point. You want voters to see if they're interested in a relationship with a particular candidate.
David Wildstein of the New Jersey Globe, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks, Laura. Talk to you soon.
New Jersey packs a lot of wow into every winter getaway. Wow. So come and get your wow on. Till you're all warm and fuzzy inside. New Jersey, it's one wow after another, after another, after another. You get it. Find your wow at visitnj.org. Little state, lotta.
We are continuing our look at the recent Democratic and Republican primary debates for governor. Joining me now is Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Micah, you were there for both debates and a moderator. Good to see you, first of all.
You too, Laura. You did such a great job. It was a pleasure sitting next to you and watching you do your magic, which was not easy. I think you had the toughest chair in the house, for sure.
Well, we were prepared for fireworks between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicans really went at it right out of the gate. Let's get your takeaway from the debates, your highs and lows.
Yeah, so I don't know if that worked the way that they thought that it was going to work. I think clearly they all had the same strategy. Come out of the box swinging, don't stop, don't let your opponent finish a sentence, finish a thought, talk over them, right? It was very much out of the Trump campaigning school, or debating school, I should say.
And this is on the Republican side,
Yeah, on the Republican
Right.
side. I don't think that played well for any of them. I think you could argue that Spadia was the most composed. He's the most used to being in front of the limelight. He could sit back, he could smile. But, you know, people who I trust who were watching did not think that it reflected well on the entire field at all. And so, you know, it really was a very stark difference between the disrespect on the Republican side and the respect that you saw for the Democrats that had for each other, the 6 candidates who were running on the Democratic side, where it was a pretty substantive debate. And so I think it was a real contrast between the two. I also think, Laura, one of the high points that stands out to me now, you know, in the rearview mirror, is that the people who viewed themselves as the challengers, so Ras Baraka, Bill Spadia, who to the establishment, meaning Chitterelli or Mikey Sherrill, the perceived frontrunners, the people who perceived themselves as a challenger and approached the debates as challengers probably had the most to gain from them. They probably did, in fact, gain the most from them. I don't like terms like winner and loser by any means, but I think in terms of reassessment, reappraisal, Baraka has had a lot of momentum coming out of the Democratic debate, and I think Spadia has had some momentum coming out of the Republican debate as well.
Yeah, one of the things that surprised me is Jack Chitterelli in his opening statements, and this is his 3rd time running for governor. Instead of taking that time to reintroduce himself to the voters, he mentions 2 of the other candidates, and that got, you know, John Bramnick saying, I want a rebuttal. And I'm saying, whoa, it's not that time yet. And they continue to talk over each other.
It was the first word out of his mouth, yeah. And so he really set the tone right out of the box that's what it was going to be. It was an invitation to the races. They were off to the races from there.
Yeah, why do you think that somebody who, again, you know, you don't want to say that they are the perceived front runner, but I mean, you know, Jack Chitterelli has more money. He's been to this rodeo before. Why would somebody, again, going back to Marketing 101, it's something I talked to David Wildstein about earlier in the show, is you don't mention your competition if you're up there, if you're winning. Why are you mentioning the competition? So why do you think he did that?
So again, I don't want to compare everything to Donald Trump, but he is the standard bearer of the Republican Party right now. And I think in the Trump school, you don't let a charge go unanswered. You don't let anything go unreturned. You come out of the box swinging. I think it's very possible that Spadia got Jack wound up. Again, not to blame him, not to cast any. I think something got under Jack's skin from almost the first moment. And we noticed that. We talked about that. He felt the need to be combative. He felt the need to come out swinging. He felt the need to hit first before he got hit. And so that was very much a decision on his part.
Yeah, and he also, it almost felt like he was playing a little defense once he got into it as well.
Right. So that front runner status comes, it cuts both ways. You get the advantage of having the support, the mainstream support, but you also have to answer for it. You have to answer for having run twice before. There was that famous line from Bramnick, which was so apt, right? Jack talks about Spadia losing an election twice, talks about being a two-time loser, and Bramnick comes back and says, who are you calling a two-time loser? So he's got to answer for having run for office before, having run for this office before, twice now.
Can we talk a little bit about how the presidential campaign, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, actually did it impact? You're talking about how the Republicans are kind of following a Trump lead, whereas the Democrats, it seemed to be a little bit more kumbaya. In fact, Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, and Steve Sweeney, they were being so polite with each other. So are there lessons from the national debate that, because the Democrats were so chill and relaxed and very, a bromance going on between some of them. Right? So is there something from the national election that the Republicans are saying, well, we're going to follow the Trump book on this, and you know what, Democrats are like, man, maybe we better tone it down a bit?
I think that on the Democratic side, there was a sense of these being the six top figures, 5 or 6. I mean, Spiller is up there too, and by the way, made a perfectly good name for himself, perfectly fine performance for himself that night. But you have some of the luminaries of the party in New Jersey. You have some of the state parties' leading figures, and there is a respect for each other. There were differences in approach. There were veiled references to criticism. Baraka talked about how he stood apart from the rest of the field, how other people up there didn't have the same position on immigration that he had. But they were respectful swipes. They were swipes that were focused on policy. They weren't gratuitous. There was almost, really, I can't think of any personal attacks. I can't think of any moments where there was attacks of a personal nature. They talked about how each other were raising their money. They talked about being the party of special interest and having Elon Musk's money and contributions from him. They talked about having teacher union money in the case of Spiller. But it was really very veiled. It was very calm. It was very neutral. You didn't see, when those charges were leveled, you didn't see Spiller saying, I've got to address that. Let me address that by attacking you back. And so it was an entirely different tenor.
Yeah, and the rules of the debate is if you are attacked, you get a chance for rebuttal. And that was a challenge as moderator to keep it on track because the Republicans were naming names in every single response. And the Democrats were sticking more to the substance, more to the issues. Do you think that, let's go to the Republicans. They had a strategy. They had a strategy. This was what they wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Did it work?
No, I don't think it worked for them. I think that if the strategy was don't give an inch, okay, nobody gave an inch. If the strategy was the best defense is a good offense, okay, those things were undeniably their strategies. But in terms of leaving a favorable impression, I don't know that anybody really did that. Now, by the way, let me temper that and say, I was not a partisan, right? And so the way I viewed this stuff, I mean, you and I were interested in a good debate. We were interested in a good exchange. We didn't get that. We didn't get high quality stuff. We didn't get highbrow. But I will tell you that a lot of the Republican partisans in the room were eating it up, loved it, right? Enjoyed it. And so it's hard to say, who got what, except to say that, nobody got this sense that they were, presenting a platform of ideas, a high-minded candidacy. There was no way to conclude that about any of them.
Let's talk about next steps here. We have the primary on June 10th. Between now and then, what are the voters going to see? We have the county conventions. Not every candidate is participating in those county conventions. So can you just kind of sum up what we're going to see between now and the primary election day?
That's a really good point. We are in what used to be the determinative phase of this contest, where the candidates are going to all 21 county organizations, and they're asking for their support. Well, that used to be what decided these things. Now, without the party line, without the county parties deciding which position each candidate has on the ballot, some of that power has been taken away. And so some of the candidates are swearing off of that support, either because they recognize that they're not going to get the support of the county parties, or because they're saying, hey, let's have a level playing field here. Let's all not compete. Let's let the voters decide. Let's let primary voters decide. So what you have is, as you said, Laura, some of the candidates on the Democratic side, like Baraka, like Philip, are saying, we're not even competing. We're not even asking for the county parties to support us. While Mikey Sherrill, the more organizational candidate, the person who has the support of a lot more of the county organizations, she's saying, hey, that's my advantage. I'm not swearing off of that. That's what I bring to the table, is getting that insider support, getting the support of the county organizations who still know how to run campaigns in their counties. They still know how to win campaigns in their counties. And so I'm not swearing off of that. That's what I bring to the table. On the Republican side, Jack Ciattarelli has that organizational support. The other three candidates in the field are swearing off of it. They're saying they don't want it. And I think that that's a very serious advantage in Jack's case, because he's got it all to himself now versus three candidates splitting up the anti-establishment lane that they don't have to themselves. So I think that's a very pronounced advantage that he has now that that they don't have.
All right. Never a dull moment in New Jersey politics. Micah Rasmussen, Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely. And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
New Jersey packs a lot of wow into every winter getaway.
Wow.
Find your wow at visitnj.org. New Jersey, little state, lot of wow.